Alrighty, welcome to the first baking episode of Common Cooking. I'm going to be doing a bunch of baking videos because everybody makes baking out to be a really complicated thing where it's like you have to follow the recipes exactly or everything's going to break down and go wrong. And that is kind of true to a certain respect, but for a lot of kind of baking you do for the day-to-day, it's not necessarily the case. You can really just mash some stuff together and it kind of works out into something bready. It's pretty good. But today, I'm just going to start off with making scones. Now, I got this recipe because when I was first trying to get into cooking and baking and that sort of stuff, what I thought was I would look up stuff you can make at a campfire, because I figured if you can make this thing out in the woods, I should be able to make it at home as someone who didn't know how to cook at all. And there's a YouTube YouTube channel I like called Coal Cracker Bushcraft, which is where I got this recipe from. And it, works in the bush, works in the kitchen. It's great. So it's a really simple recipe. You need some flour. I'm using white flour here. I also have done it with bread flour and whole wheat flour. You can mix it up. Also white flour with wheat bran. But we're just gonna keep it simple today. You're gonna want 2 cups of flour, and again, what's nice about this is, we're making this in the bush, you're not really getting exact measurements. Right? You're not out there with a little teaspoon and like that. I just put flour everywhere, that's cool. But, you don't have to be perfect with this. You can get a little bit more, a little bit less. It's not going to hurt it. At the end of the day, you're getting scones. And on that note, the flour's going in there. So you want 2 cups of flour. You're going to want a teaspoon each sugar and salt. Now I'm using salted butter. So as you go just a little shy on the salt there. Don't pour the salt over the whole. That's the oven preheated at 415. If you have a whisk, it's great for this. If not, good old wooden spoon or even your hand will work, to be honest. Another thing you want is baking powder. That's a tablespoon. So this is a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of sugar, and you want a tablespoon of baking powder. Now, baking powder and baking soda are both called leavening agents, where they're the thing that makes the breads fluffy and things. Now, the way they're different is baking soda is the one that comes in the orange container usually. Baking soda is a lot more potent, I guess, than baking powder. So something like a tablespoon of baking powder, you'd probably use like a teaspoon or less of baking soda. But they act differently too. Baking soda needs acid to activate. It's like, if you ever made a volcano as a kid where you put baking soda and vinegar together, it bubbles. That's what you're doing when you're baking with that. So you need some sort of acid to activate the baking soda. Baking powder, however, activates with liquid, which is why we put our milk in at the very end, because as soon as you add the milk, it starts to fluff and leaven, and you want to put that on the tray and in the oven. You don't want to just leave that sitting there. Same thing with baking soda once you add the vinegar and stuff too. You also, milk's great in this. I accidentally bought skim. This will definitely be better with 1%, but we do put a good amount of butter in there too. But you can also do this with water. I started making this recipe and didn't know I was out of milk before. And same thing with breads. If you add milk to bread, it's going to be a bit nicer. Water works just as well, as long as you have something that moistens it when you make dough with. That's fine, but milk preferred. Doesn't need much whisking there. Now, that's basically it. We're just about done there. Sway. Now if we're putting the butter in, what you want for scones is to do something called cutting the butter in. Now the way to cut butter in is it needs to be refrigerated, not room temperature. Because what it does is you really mash it in there into little balls. With your hands, it gets into like a kind of pea-sized balls. I'll show you when you get there, it'll make more sense. But you need to do it with cold butter because with room temperature butter, it's going to be too creamy. And it's just going to mix in with the flour too well. And the reason you don't want that to happen is because when you have those little pockets of butter, the little pockets of butter is what makes like the scone kind of flaky and fluffy. If you do it with room temperature butter and stuff, it's going to be more like bready than it will be flaky and fluffy like a scone usually is. So you just put that in there, just get to work with your hands. Just, really just mash it apart in there until you start to get the pea size and it's all mixed in. And it doesn't take all that long. You'll see it's pretty obvious once you get there. You just have to work it in. And it's called cutting in. This is called cutting in butter. We're cutting butter in. So if you ever see that for any other things where they say cut in butter, this is exactly what they're talking about. But yeah, a lot of people overcomplicate baking and stuff. I make fun of myself when I do it too. Like I call it like ghetto bread, but I also call it like dinner bread. Where if I'm out of bread and I've made some soup or something, or I just want some bread with dinner, you just take whatever flour you have and add a bit of water. Literally flour and water is all you need to actually make a sort of bread-like thing. You just make a dough with the flour and water. You put it on the baking tray. Put it in the oven at 400, whatever you want, really. It's so ghetto anyway. You can experiment with it, which I'd encourage you to do. To be honest, we'll do it in another video too. It's not great, but you do get bread. It's great for adding to soup. It thickens the soup out. And it's easy to make that really good because you add a little bit of baking powder, and it's not so hard. You don't really need to leave it actually in the soup water. You can eat it almost like a bread. You do the next day for sure. It stales out like you wouldn't believe. But you do that, add a little bit of salt, a little bit of sugar. It's decent. I call it dinner bread because I'll make it for dinner fairly often. Because it's super easy to do. But anyway, you see how, I guess not quite peas, but you see how it's flaky and sort of fluffy. There's a bunch of pea-sized ones in there too. That's what we're looking for. So that's cutting in the butter. Just to make sure. Got that in the video. Now you're going to want to add a cup of milk. Oops, hands are slippery from the flour. Now you don't want to just dump the milk in all at once. You can, but it makes it harder to mix in well. You want to go with, thereabouts half. It's just easier this way. That's the only reason. Because you start to make a little bit of a dough first and have all that liquid mixed in with the flour, and then round two. You'll see the kind of consistency you want with this dough. It should be kind of fluffy. It should be not like a bread dough. Definitely not like a bread dough. If that means anything to you. Oh yeah. Oh, it even just smells good. Smell the butter. It's also really easy. This is the base. This is the basic recipe for the scones. Super easy to go much further than this too. I was debating even just doing that to start here, but I figured to keep it simple to start. But you can add in some cinnamon and cloves and nutmeg, spice it up a little bit. I'll grate some cheese and put that in some rosemary or maybe thyme. What else have I done? We'll make it plain and then just also cover it in maple syrup when it's done, which is nice. I'll often put jam. I don't usually butter it because there's already lots of butter in, so it's already nice and kind of buttery. But boy, does it go well with something sweet. Yeah, honey jam, maple syrup on top is good. Especially if you put in the cinnamon and nutmeg and cloves and stuff too. But anyway, that's enough of that. Now, I make 6 from these. You see how that consistency is? And it is kind of fluffy, like you'd expect it to be a bit heavier, but it's light. That's not a really scone looking one. I'm gonna actually put that back. It's too much of a ball, because I like them to look scony. A little rough on the edges, you know? It's all about that presentation. Have food tasting good is looking good. Last little bit of dough off on the inside that you can. Now I don't know if you can see in the video, but this first one was quite a bit bigger than the others here. And you want them all more or less the same size. Doesn't have to be perfect, but alrighty. And that's that. No, I put these in at 4:15 for usually 13 minutes, but last time I thought they were a little underdone, so I'm going to put them in for 14. Just in the middle rack there. Oh yeah. And we'll see you when the timer beeps. Thought I'd just show you this as I do the dishes here. If you've never really baked before and this is your first time baking, flour sticks to stuff like a lot when it's wet. The trick is you don't need to let it soak. You don't even need to use soap. Put a bit of water in the bottom here like I have and just run your fingers and your hands across all of it. This flour is not so bad, it's whatever. It's a lot stickier and gluey with breads and stuff just because of the different kind of dough you make. But just put a little water in there and just keep working the water on your fingers and work your fingers in the bowl. I'm not doing it there because it's gonna move, but that's how you clean those. Okay, so the timer just beeped there, and I'm gonna need a oven mitt. Oh yeah, look at that. Perfect, that's exactly what you want. Just that touch of browning on top there. Oh yeah. Now, we're gonna want to take these and put them on a cooling rack. And you're not going to really want to eat one of these right away. They're much better if you can let them cool a little bit, so they're not too hot. But they're also amazing like this, I'm not going to lie. I eat them right out of the oven all the time too. But they are kind of like more scony if you let them cool, 10, 15 minutes. But there you have it. Super simple, and you can add so much variation to that. I mean, you take that, put maple syrup on it. Take that one, put strawberry jam on it. Like 2 whole different desserts, It's amazing. They're also good just like that. And as I said, with some grated cheese and rosemary. Some cinnamon and cloves too. Dash of nutmeg. I love them. So easy and so yummy. Hope you enjoyed this video. This will be my first one in the baking series, which I expect will be long because baked goods are great. I like bread. All right, take it easy.